Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another tutorial. Today we'll be talking about how to layer your mid basses. We'll actually be taking a look at the same track that we referenced to last time, which is in the video how to make vocal chops. So here's what the track sounds like again. And then this is what the mid bass layers sound like with the sub. All right, before we get started, I just want to do a big shout out to Amadeus. He's actually the one who taught me everything that I'm about to share today, so all credit goes to him. Yeah, and also I think I'll be starting a Patreon. So if you want to grab this project file, I don't think I'm going to include everything because I don't know if I want to release this track yet or anything like that. But in the project file, I'll include all the basses and the presets and everything, so that way you don't have to go look for it yourself. As well as I got a few requests for the Midas project, so I think I'll upload that on there as well as some of my previous project files and upcoming project files. So if that's something that you want to check out or want to support, definitely I'll leave the link in the description below, and you can go ahead and check out the Patreon over there. All right, so to kind of get started, basically I think there's probably a few different ways that you can layer your mid basses, but generally the way that I go about it is like I'll have kind of like one basic classic gritty bass that has like 2 saw waves and that's more spread, and I'll definitely like show you everything and all the layers after this. And then I'll have another gritty bass, which is this one. It's kind of like a top bass in a way, but I don't really, I guess, look at that in that way, but it probably could be classified as a top bass. But like another bass, that's not a saw wave, also spread meaning like more detuned. And then I'll have like another mid bass, but that's like less detuned, so that when you combine it all together, like it all sounds like one cohesive sound. So to kind of like show you an example or like give some context, so this is like the first gritty bass or a mid bass here. So like that's your classic like gritty bass that's like spread. This is like the angry bass, the classic freaking progressive house angry bass from Kashmir. Again, like all the presets and the project file, just the basses will be on the Patreon. But yeah, I think it's just 2 saw waves. Yeah, as you can see here, it's like 2 saw waves, some like distortion, EQ and stuff like that. And basically like, yeah, and you can also put OTT if you like. I think that's just like completely optional, or more processing, but I just have this EQ and then taking out everything below 100 for the sub, and then basically dipping out some of the higher frequencies. Like you can kind of hear like there's a lot of like high end right there. So that's basically what it does. And like EQing is kind of like situational and just really depends on the context. But I think a really good rule of thumb, especially for your basses and stuff, maybe dipping out some of the higher end just so you can make room for the leads and the noise might be a good idea. Again, it's all situational. I've seen some people not really even do this at all. It just really depends what you have in the mix and like how it all sounds together as a complete full sound. So yeah, that's basically just really it for the layer 1. And then layer 2 is we have the classic Midas gritty bass that you might have seen from the Midas walkthrough or Midas remake that I made. So like this is like your more like less detuned one. And then yeah, it's just again two saw waves, like nothing on the detune. This is basically up an octave +7, which is basically playing the 5th, because basically all the bass notes are the root note of the chord, so +7 would be the 5th of that. And again, not too crazy on the detune, a little bit of phase just so it can basically like play at a different part of the waveform. Some distortion and EQ. And I think that's really it. Yeah, there's nothing here. And then in terms of processing for this one, I'll just go over it just in case for anyone who hasn't seen this. So yeah, some basic, pretty standard OTT, some EQ again, cutting off the highs. Once again, these compressors aren't really doing anything because I'm not sidechaining it. Yeah, and that's that. And then here we have like another gritty bass, but this time we're using a different like waveform. And this is basically just like a standard preset called Angry Boss in Serum. I didn't really do anything to it, you know. So you can just select that, and they did their own stuff to it. And then same thing, just like cutting out like everything below 100 for the sub, and then doing more noise because this one actually had a lot of noise. And if you want, you can also do that too. And yeah, like together, like you have one cohesive sound after like layering all those three together. And then let's just say, for example, like, you know, these weren't like dipped out like that. Let's just see what would happen. Again, this is like all context and depending on like what you have in your track. But in this case, we have like a vocal chop and like some high end from saws and noise. But this is what would happen if you didn't have those shelves. And then compared to if you had the shelves. Like pay attention to like the high end, you know. So yeah, basically like imagine like if you had like other lead layers and stuff like that were covering the high end, or even rides and stuff, you know, it basically just kind of like all start clashing at the high end. So that's literally the point of the shelves. And you know, the basic concept of these like mid basses is like when you look at the span, like most of them cover like the full frequency spectrum. So like you basically just see like that dip because I made the dip, but like generally like when you're choosing your mid basses, like that's kind of like how you get that full sounding like, you know, drop or sound is basically just like because it's covering basically the whole entire frequency spectrum. And we have this one. And we have this one. And this one's kind of like high here too. So like, you know, if you had, for example, again, a lead or something that's like really like covering that area, you know, you can either dip out this bass, for example, or even like dip out some of the leads. So that way, like it's more of like a cleaner mix. And again, like it's all situational. It just really depends, like, you know, what you have in your track. And then another thing that Nurko actually taught me is, you know, basically using a filler bass to make up for like certain frequencies that you're missing in your like saw stack. In this particular track, I didn't use it because I felt like I didn't need it. I also think this filler bass is kind of like most likely a preference thing because I actually haven't really. No one else has actually taught me this besides Nurko, or I've never actually heard any other artists like kind of share this. But you know, if you like it, definitely go for it. That's definitely, I think, how Nurko gets like that, like really like lawnmower fat sounding bass is actually by just adding this filler bass. I don't know if he did it for all his tracks, but I do know that he's done it for some of them for sure. But yeah, this is basically kind of like what it sounds like by itself. And basically like you just EQ basically to like what frequency like you want to fill up. So just kind of using this as an example. Again, I don't think this is going to be like the greatest example because I didn't even use this track, but you'll get the basic idea on how you can try it out or try using it. So like you see right there around there to like the 80 to maybe 150 or 200 range, you'll see like there's kind of like that dip. So that's basically what this is actually doing, is making up for that frequency spectrum. And so this is basically without it again. And then with it. So yeah, just really filling out the space, and to kind of like, again, it's a little hard when you're not doing everything in context, but just to kind of give you an example with the saws. So this is without the bass. And then with this. Yeah, so basically like it just makes everything like a lot more full. Here's basically the settings or whatever for the filler bass. Really simple, just like a Monster 2. I think it's like a more digital waveform. And then you have a saw wave, up an octave +7 doing the fifth again, the detune, not too much in the detune, and then just distortion maxed out basically. Any distortion of your choice probably could work. And then like just some saturation just to make it a bit warmer. Yeah, that's really it. And the thing about these EQs is like, you know, I even have an EQ here on the saw here just to dip out that area to make more room for the bass basically, because this is what would happen if I had this EQ or didn't have it. And then with the EQ. So yeah, again, making more room for that bass basically. And then sometimes you can even like take out like, you know, the mids of the bass and then boost the mids of the saws. In this case, we didn't, because we actually did it with the vocal chop already. If you haven't seen yet, in the last video, we basically just like boosted the mids of the vocal chops and then lowered the mids into saws basically, just to give more room for the chops. But yeah, it's basically just kind of like all situational, and just really depends like what you have in your mix, because sometimes you don't want to boost the saws because you might have like a really mid-heavy for example, you know, in this track, a mid-heavy vocal chop. Well, let's say for example, like you have like a progressive house track with like tons of leads, and maybe the leads aren't too mid-heavy, then maybe you have enough room to like boost your saws in the mids, and then you can also lower the mids in your grid bass or your bass layers basically. So yeah, this really all depends. And then lastly, we just have this like really basic sub. Basically like this is just like a Virtual Riot preset basically. I don't even know. Yeah, there's some distortion basically. But yeah, it's just a bunch of like sine waves. I think that's what they're called. Yeah, sine waves. And this one's up an octave. They actually had like a +7. I think for the most part, like a sub's pretty standard. Like you can just use like a sine wave and like you're good to go. Like really, again, like it's just really about like covering the frequency spectrum. But yeah, in terms of processing, this is something that also Nurko taught me as well, to like kind of beef up your sub. You can use like any of like these bass presets in Decapitator. This one I chose beefy. You can even try mid driver. I think that's a good one too. Just whatever you like the most. And then there's also an OTT after. There's I think, because I've heard two different sides of this, so I don't know which one is the right answer. You might want to do your own research and see like what makes more sense to you. But basically, at least what Nurko taught me, the idea of this OTT is to basically like sometimes in the sub, the volume may like bounce around and stuff like that. I don't even know if this is gonna work, but let's just try it. But yeah, like I don't even know if this is gonna be the best example, but like sometimes when you have like your sub, you might even see in here that's better. Like it might be like sometimes it's like bigger. This one, it doesn't seem like it's happening too often, but there's times in other subs where like the volumes are a bit different, and I've heard like sometimes that's where you like go in manually and like adjusting the volume so that way it's not doing that. But that's kind of like what this OTT was here for originally. Like it's basically compressing everything so like controls the volume. But I actually heard from someone else that when you add the OTT, that's when like the volume starts bouncing around. So I have no idea what's the right answer for that one in particular. But I think in that case, again, do your research and see like what's the best answer for you, and definitely go with that. And next up, we just have a utility, basically just setting it up. That's not so it's not stereo basically, and just reducing some of the gain, because it was kind of a bit loud. Basically after that is your standard like EQ, just cutting out everything that's basically over 100. And then lastly, this is a plugin that I actually don't have, but if you want to beef up your sub even more, you can actually add something called Kick Tight. That's basically doing the same purpose as the Decapitator, just again beefing up your sub basically. And also on the group chain, just not really too much, but just like a Saturn 2 fat tape, just basically making it warmer and like combining everything together. But yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of things that you can do on your mid basses and stuff like that, like more processing and stuff if you wanted to, and it's probably more optional than it's necessary. So as long as you're like filling out the frequencies, you are good to go. Like I saw in Blank's Patreon, like his basses don't even have like an EQ or anything or any processing. I think it was just like a multi-band compression or something like that, and that was it, So yeah, completely optional and just kind of like up to you. But yeah, guys, I think that's going to be it for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't yet. And also please hit the bell notification symbol so you know when my next video goes live. Also follow me on Instagram and TikTok. I post like shorter music production tips just like this on there. So definitely, if you like this video, you'll definitely like my social media. And then also join the Discord. I'm looking to create a community where we can all help each other grow and give each other feedback on our tracks and stuff like that. So if that's something that you find interesting, definitely join that. As always, I will leave all the links in the description below. Thank you so much again. Until next time, much love. Peace out.